Hey Kyle, how's it going?
All things considered, not too bad. How about you, Tom?
It's going. I'm talking to people who are, facing a lot of challenges these days. Excited to do this fireside chat with you today. Just talk about how we have, you know, what the coming roadblocks are for the changing tariff situation. So I think we'll start with a little bit of introductions. Can you talk about what you do at Terminal 49 and maybe more importantly, your background?
Yeah, start with the background. Originally started in shipping, doing routing and forecasting for all of the large commercial vessels in the world. From there, transitioned to freight forwarding for a while. Was with Flexport, and now happy that I'm at Terminal 49, working in customer success, coming up on a year now, trying to help our customers you know, track their containers, how to make that fit best into their workflows, and right now trying to help them see if there's anything we can do to make their lives a little less chaotic on the container side, given everything that's going on with tariffs. Of course, for them, it's been hard to even talk to because of how crazy and how fast things have been changing over the last few weeks. I'm just hoping they calm down sometime soon.
Yeah, I mean, just by way of introduction, my name's Dom Santomieri. I'm a account executive here at Terminal 49. I've been here a little over 2 years now, and what I get to spend a lot of time doing is working on solving strategic business problems with our customers. So, how does visibility fit into the bigger picture? How does it create more value than just time saved? So, I think the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, Kyle, is what are the we've had these tariffs, we've had the 90-day pause, but there's still some things happening in between. So, what happens on May 2nd?
On May 2nd, the de minimis loophole disappears. For those who don't know, anything coming into the U.S. that was under $800 in value fell into these de minimis category, where it was exempt from customs charges. So recently, especially a lot of like direct to consumer, like you think Shein, Temu, like they shipped almost everything under this de minimis, which came in duty free. That loophole is going away not only for China, as was originally hinted on May 2nd, but appears to be going away for all countries on May 2nd.
So, even if you're ordering a $500 case of wine from France now, owe whatever the you owe whatever that is.
Or for the smaller ones, there was also an additional, it was the percentage of tariffs or a minimum amount. I forget that amount off the top of my head, but for some of the smaller ones, it makes it completely not worth it to ship in these smaller parcels. It'd be way higher for the minimum amount than what tariffs would be.
Okay. Okay. And and so depending on the specific commodity, we're going to see a shift either towards no importation or a shift away from individual consumers.
At least in the shipping method, we could see some of these get for larger bulk shipments, but that works great for large importers. For a lot of small businesses, small importers, like they may not have enough to fill out like a large, order and make it work. So they're going to get hammered.
Okay. Um, and then interestingly, DHL announced today, we're recording this on Easter Mondays, the April 21st. Um, they're stopping shipments over $800.
Yeah. I mean, curious move. I wonder if it's just a rush to get as much de minimis in as they can in the next what 10, 12 days now, and get as much as they can before the new rules go into effect.
Are service providers on the hook for clearing uh high would DHL be on the hook for the import duties if people started trying to bring in a whole bunch of Swiss watches or something?
It That probably depends on the arrangement that the importer has with DHL as the forwarder. Are they clearing customs? Is customs being cleared by a third party? Yeah, so that'll just depend on that relationship.
Okay.
But somewhat like from my understanding, as long as it's in to the U.S. before that time, so this would be a big air freight concern, but as long as it's in by that time, like you've got a little leeway in clearing customs. But so it's not going to be, if customs is filed by this time, if the goods are in the U.S., usually customs clearance is pretty quick, less than 24 hours. So, but with the surge there, we'll see. There's gonna be a lot going on in the next few days here, especially for those de minimis shipments.
Yeah. Well, and then May 3rd, the new automotive content plan is supposed to come out, and this was the delay from the original plan that was going to levy a flat 25% tax on every automobile, but now it seems like the tier one importers and the amount of cross border trips between US, Mexico, and Canada that every vehicle that's assembled effectively on this continent is, goes through. Seems like there's some kind of new content planning coming for that, which I think will be good. Have you heard anything from our automotive customers about how they are trying to segment shipments cross border?
I think it's a great point to bring up is like we work with few automotive importers and they previous to this announcement had been kind of debating. They all a lot of stuff built in within North America, some stuff still coming from overseas. So for them, was it do they reroute it to their US factory and just have it, pay the tariff as it came in here once? Or do they keep the same process, have it go to Mexico, cross the border, back and forth? There's some parts that would go across the border for a finished car like 4, 5, 6 times. So then pre this, announcement, they were heavily considering which country do I send the parts to? Do I need to, reduce containers to one area, send them to a different area? Now, at least from the conversations we've had, it seems like there's a little bit more relief there with some more clarity around how tariffs are going to impact auto parts. Because that's, I think, kind of the biggest feedback we've been getting from our clients is the speed at which the rules change again, and go back, like makes planning very, very difficult. So, for the auto ones having these like more firm rules just for auto, of course, I think they're still like hedging a little bit. Will they change again? And kind of, planning for anything that might happen. But getting more clarity for them seems to help out a lot.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that reading the executive order, it seems that USMCA, so that's the agreement that replaced NAFTA. It seems like USMCA goods are still duty free at this point.
Or the agreed. There were some that had certain duties, but yeah, it seems like anything under USMCA should follow that agreement.
Okay. So, I mean, do you think we're going to see a big swing in the next, say we're a week from May, so May, June, part of July? I mean, are we going to see a big swing towards our customers and other importers trying to relocate supply chains to Mexico or Canada or
Yeah,
Canada's?
that I feel like it probably really depends on their business if they're going to look into relocating it. I think for some other ones, some consumer brands we work with, they're importing from outside of the US and to their distribution centers within the US. To relocate those right now is it's a very expensive thing to do. Whether you're going to transfer inventory, if it's you're going through a 3PL, if it's your own internal distribution, like this is a very expensive prospect. And at least the ones that I've talked to so far are kind of on pause because of how many times things have changed. But I mean, I do think if we saw kind of a solidifying of the rules where goods going to US and Canada still followed USMCA, ended up with lower tariffs, we probably would see a shift of some of that from coming into especially if the origin is China with 145% tariffs from the US. Other countries will see what, in what is it, 80 days now since the pause? Like we'll see what it is in 80 days for what those reciprocal ones look like. But anything where, the supply starts in China, which is a lot of supply chains, we could see some kind of refactoring of that order to Canada or Mexico, depending on exactly how everything shakes out. What was it? 20 years ago, to help get around tariffs, Mercedes shipped their cars in parts from Germany to the US and just put them together, kind of like an IKEA kit. Eventually, they started making them in the US, but like that was their way to get around tariffs. We may see something similar in the short term where, stuff coming out of China is shipped to, say, Mexico or Canada, and that same IKEA kit for whatever is assembled and then sold into the US to avoid tariffs. It introduces friction and inefficiency into the overall trade market, but with 145% tariffs, like it still probably makes more sense than shipping directly from China.
Well, I mean, the laws of economics tell us that there will always be high taxes create a gray market no matter what, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so I don't think I think there will be a massive, there will be a massive industry that pops up if these tariffs take a final effect. And on the flip side of that, FTZs and bonded warehouses. What are you seeing with those? Because I've been hearing some customer actions around those. But I talk to people who aren't quite our customers yet. You talk to people who are been working with us for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, not just our customers, just in general, there's been an incredible surge of goods into free trade zones since, was it 20 days now, when the original announcement was made. And that's clearly, companies that are importing to the US are hoping to get their goods into these zones so they can avoid paying duties as they slowly, sell them into the US in the future, or just keep them in there for now to reevaluate their supply chain to see if it makes more sense to ship the goods to other countries. And of course, like it's it's not free to send stuff to a free trade zone or bonded warehouse. So getting this is definitely an extra cost that a lot of businesses are incurring right now, and as they're waiting to see how everything shakes out.
Yeah, it's interesting talking to different customers who do different things. Obviously, we have a pretty big footprint in the refrigerated foods and agricultural space, and they have quota shipments on top of that. And so those guys obviously use a lot of bonded warehouses because they're bringing things in and then they're trying to, you know, nail that quota. And I don't even know what's going to happen with the agricultural quotas. Um, I mean, I
Yeah,
can't
and
imagine.
that I mean, and that's those are goods that are perishable. Like they can't hold them and wait to see what happens. Like their food's coming in, and it's got to come in quickly, or else it's just going to go bad.
Right, right. And there's New Zealand, Brazil, right? These are big, um obviously the Philippines, Vietnam. I mean, you want to talk about a lot of fish and animal product that has to come in frozen. And there's obviously a lot of produce from South America, bananas. I don't think we'll feel the weight of the agricultural tariffs quite yet because we're coming into the US harvest season.
Yeah, and most of those fall under would be the reciprocal tariffs, which are currently paused. So that'll be, you know, as we get to July and the fall, like we'll see how that shakes out. But like you said, it being U.S. harvest season right now, especially out here in California, that'll be, kind of a short-term buffer, but we'll see how things go as we get to the later half of the year.
Absolutely. And the other thing I do want to say is focusing on some of the actions our customers are taking. They're really looking at cash flow and margins on different goods, what they're doing with them. If speaking with someone they import from Asia and they do distribution for North and South America from a hub here in the US. And so they're actually making sure that they have expanded their free trade zone footprint so they can land everything without paying duties and then only pay duties as they make sales into the US because Canada and then all of Central and South America are excluded from the current tariff situation.
Yeah, yeah. Order, I mean, for a lot of importers, order to cash is a huge problem. They have to pay factories, they have to pay forwarders, they have to pay everything way before they get paid for their goods. So if you add tariffs on top of that that need to be paid when it first comes into the country, like that's even bigger strain on their cash flow. So a lot of them will probably be looking towards free trade zones to be able to pay any type of additional tax tariff closer to when they can actually get paid for the goods. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that a lot more in seasonal goods, like
Mm.
fake, artificial Christmas trees, winter apparel or, summer apparel, depending on the time of year. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that a lot more in seasonal goods where their their cash flow tends to be really concentrated in specific seasons.
Well, I was gonna say the other thing is, what are our various customers doing? Because we've got customers across things. I'm hearing about people just pausing shipments in China, like just that's it. I want to say they're abandoning goods, but they're certainly not putting them onto boats right now.
Mhm.
More transshipments inside of Asia. What are the routing? What are you hearing?
I mean, I think that's the biggest shock that a lot of our clients have gotten from this announcement is within the first Trump administration, there had been already, the trade war 1.0, I guess we'll call it, with China, which raised duties on China and made it clear in that administration, and the policies were continued by Biden, like that the US was trying to decouple its economy from China. So a lot of importers that we work with now that I used to work with in my time at Flexport, like had already started to diversify their sourcing and moving stuff to Vietnam, Indonesia, India, other parts of Southeast, like they had already started moving out of China to produce these goods
Mhm.
in these other countries, probably caused the trade deficit that we have with these other countries to increase, which now with trade war 2.0, it seems that is what the administration is targeting is the trade deficit. So that's the part that has really caught a lot of our clients kind of off guard was they were already working to decouple from China, move their supply chains out of there. Obviously, for some goods, that's easier than for other goods.
Mhm.
So they were already doing that. So when these reciprocal tariffs came in, they were, they expected something, but getting the 46% on Vietnam, I don't think was in anyone's Ouija board for what was coming. So that has taken like a real shot, especially to like furniture importers. Like a lot of them had relocated to Vietnam. Some of our clients there, like I want to say that I kind of talked to all of them about this, but like they're still in emergency planning mode. So we've scheduled the meeting 2 or 3 times, and they've canceled it because they're still in emergency planning mode, trying to figure out what they're going to do, which I think many companies are doing right now, trying to figure out what's going to happen and how they can best contingency plan for the future. We've heard from ones we have talked to, they're looking at other countries as potential sources, maybe India, maybe Brazil, kind of continuing of the friend shoring that we saw over the past 6, 7 years now.
Well, I was gonna say if we pull this in a little bit tighter to what we're good at, which
Hmm.
is tracking boats, tracking containers. I mean, there was a lot of goods that if they were not movable by air freight are well, there's a lot of fast boat services from China, right? I mean, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, whatever, straight from the big Chinese ports right to US West Coast. And that's normally what, like a 2 week transit time plus a couple days on the docks on either side.
Yeah, and I think importantly there to note, some of these fast boat services have their own dedicated docks. So not only is the ship itself going faster, but once it gets to port, like you're not going to have to wait in line to say berth at LA Long Beach. You can just, they have their own dedicated dock. They're going in and they'll be able to offload super quickly.
So uh, I guess my thought becomes if even if someone's able to um, say they've been working on dual sourcing since the first Trump administration, uh, and they're able to ramp up their alternative supplier in Indonesia, and they're pulling all of their capacity down to 0% in China. Even then, what are the impacts on the actual transit times and the logistics end of the supply chain? Because we've been talking about, oh, suppliers this, suppliers that. We're kind of assuming that there's a steady state black box of ocean shipments in the middle, and that we know that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, moving the way the alliances are set up now is, you know, it's similar to the hub and spoke model of airplanes. Like if you have smaller ports with lower volumes, you put on a smaller ship and, maybe hit those ports less frequently. And then if you're sailing out of a major port like Shenzhen and going to Los Angeles, like you're going to have multiple sailings a day. You can pick, do you want the fast boat? Do you want another one? Like that's how the world is set up right now to funnel from these smaller feeder vessels into large transshipment ports, put them on the larger ships, which are more economical, and then send them over to, along major supply lanes to the US, to Europe from Asia. So if you start putting a, a lot more a lot more cargo demand into places that don't have that kind of port infrastructure built up, that don't have the same shipping schedule right now. Like all of the shipping lines are going to have to adjust. We're already seeing massive spikes in rolled shipments from Asia to the US as a result of the tariffs is destroying demand out of China. So that means your schedule reliability is going to be severely impacted in the short term, as well as availability of space as they work to kind of redo their networks to accommodate the new reality in trade, which still may rely on ports in China for transshipment locations. Like it's hard, 40 something million containers go through Shanghai a year. It's hard to get another port very quickly that can handle anything close to that kind of volume. But how are they going to redeploy vessels now to, say, these smaller ports in Indonesia that may not accommodate the larger vessels? And if we really want to throw a wrench into that, the new rules for vessel origin coming to the US may complicate that even further in October, stay the same as have been currently announced.
Yeah, so I mean, you could see, arguably, and call it in the next 6 months, you could potentially see the the logistics the logistics part of the supply chain have to move to new suppliers outside of China, which any number of different things could happen with tariffs and their ability to source product. The Arguably you're going to lose the ability to have a reliable fast boat service, and you're going to have to do many more transshipments through big ports like, I'm guessing, Busan and Singapore will probably be the next.
Yeah. Yeah, Singapore is already number two in the world. Like they'll see a lot, especially if a lot of it shifts to Southeast Asia, Busan and Korea. I wouldn't be surprised if potentially Japan saw some more transshipment as well. Just geographically, they're on the Great Circle route from Asia to the US, so it makes sense just geographically.
And so there really could be another, I mean, recession or no recession, right? I'm
hmm
not an economist. I don't pretend to be. But recession or no recession, we are at least heading for another massive supply chain storm.
Um, I mean, like you said, like no one can predict the future. I think especially economists. But yeah, there's, hands down, there's going to be disruptions to supply chains, to sailings, you know, as like we said with the vessel rolling, like that's going to mess up, you know, for weeks. Once something gets rolled, it could take, weeks if there are a lot of rolls for a schedule to get back on track. And we're seeing that all over the place. I did quickly mention the new US rules proposing charges on vessels built in China and also on Chinese carriers. There is a loophole in that, of course, of if the vessel is under 4,000 TEU, they don't have to pay the fee. Most of those smaller vessels right now are used on kind of smaller feeder routes, and we've been transitioning and building out port infrastructure in the US for years now to accommodate the larger 10, 12, 15,000 vessels. But all of a sudden, if the small vessels become cheaper because they don't have to pay a port fee, like you could see a total shift in how vessels are deployed around the world. The reason that the shipping companies have gone to bigger ships is because you have to pay one crew and you're getting much more efficient per container when you're putting 20,000 on one ship instead of 3,000. But now if you have to pay millions of dollars in fees for that 20,000 to ship to dock, those economies of scale are gone and they'll have to shift them to smaller vessels, which, you know, the number of vessels going through ports are going to change for the routes, like just total kind of chaos for a little bit as the whole system reorients to the new normal,
Yeah,
whatever that might be, because it could change again.
yeah. I don't think our port infrastructure is going to do well with 4,000 TEU vessels. I mean, the amount of time it takes to move in and out of port, and like you said, everything is set up for these. I mean, really, the U.S. West Coast is serviced by ships that can't even fit through the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to see a massive, massive swing. So, all right. Well, I think we covered some of what our customers are talking about today, and we've added to the conversation. I think, unfortunately, we're back to the same point where all of our customers are at, where it's we don't know what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just, like all of our customers, we're learning this at the same time they are and trying to react and just help them in any way possible to make it hurt just like a little less. Whether that's like knowing, how the routes are going to shake out, what the timing is, like it's
Hmm.
right now everyone is kind of, for lack of a better analogy, everyone's in the same boat. So, we're all just trying to figure this out together.
Excellent. Well, thanks.
Yeah, good talking to you. Talk to you later, Dom. Bye.